Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Thunderstruck, our look back at the greatest matches of Jushin Thunder Liger, as picked by each unique standalone guest of this series. And joining me today is a man who appeared on two episodes of the previous series I did, Cruel Summer. He is my favorite lawyer friend, Matt McEwen. You might be my only lawyer friend.
Yeah, we don't make friends easily, so if you have more than one lawyer friend, that might be a reflection on you more than anything.
So let's talk about you and your fan relationship with Jushin Thunder Liger. What does he mean to you, Matt?
That's a good question. I never really put it that way because I don't think that deeply about my wrestling fandom, but I think Liger's been a constant in my favorite things about wrestling for the better part of 25 years now. Going back to like searching out wrestling magazines when I was a preteen in my early teens, and Liger immediately, as soon as you see a picture of him, he stands out. He's flashy, he looks crazy, and then the second you see him wrestle, especially back in the late 80s, early 90s, you're like, wow, this is not what you expect to see out of wrestling. And it was kind of like a next level thing. And the fact that he's continued on and still been good over all these years. And I remember getting to see him live for the first time in Toronto, and I was amazed by that, and it was incredible. I've had the pleasure of seeing him live a few more times. And just at any point where my wrestling fandom has peaked, Liger has always been a part of it, either the reason for it or a good part of the underneath of the peak of that foundation has been Liger's always there. So he's been a constant. So when he leaves after January, it's going to be a little bit weird.
What was you say was your first time you ever saw him? Who was he in a match against?
I think the first time I ever saw Liger, it would have been against Benoit, I think. I would have snooped out one of those matches so those would have been happening when I was 13 or 14, and I would have snooped him out there. And I actually think it might have been from, do you remember on TSN, Ed Whalen used to host a show, and it was wrestling from all the different territories that were still going in the late 80s and early 90s?
No, because I think that was when like TSN was still a cable channel, like a paid cable channel, and my family never sprung for it, so I didn't get to watch Stampede until like way after the fact on tape trading, sites and stuff, things like that.
Yeah, so there was a Stampede show, but then there was like Ed Whalen's Weekly Pro Wrestling or something like that, and he just hosted a clip show, and they did a lot of Central State stuff, and there was occasional Florida matches, and every once in a while there'd be like a world class match, but they did some stuff from Japan, so Liger would show up on that every once in a while.
So your first time seeing him, you're thinking is the match against Chris Benoit, and it was a match that was shown on Ed Whalen's clip show.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure it was from New Japan.
Okay, well that would make sense. I mean, like that's when he was like Benoit was doing the Pegasus Kid, Wild Pegasus gimmick. Was he wearing a mask or was he unmasked?
Honestly, don't remember, but I would assume from the time frame I'm thinking of, he would have still been in the mask.
Okay, so he would have been Pegasus Kid at that point. Okay. So, I'm sure I'll be saying this in conjunction with every other guest I do this on, but like my first experience with Liger was in WCW, which I think is like true for a lot of people. And it was the matches for the light heavyweight title, the WCW light heavyweight title that he had in the series he had against like Pillman. And then from there, I'd see him like sporadically show up on WCW television. And then when I started tape trading, boom, it's like all the New Japan stuff. Oh my God. Wild Pegasus, Black Tiger, Eddie Guerrero, Shinjiro Otani, Koji Kanemoto, Tatsuhiro Takaiwa, and then like all the dream matches he would have, like people against Sasuke and Hayabusa and everyone else. So it's interesting, like where one of the things like I find interesting about like my conversations with people is like, where did you discover Liger and so forth and so on. But it's interesting, like you're much like different perspective. Like you discovered it through like this kind of Western Canada wrestling scene kind of connection. I discovered it just on through WCW basically.
Yeah, the only thing I know that it wasn't through WCW that I found out who Liger was, because I remember being excited hearing that Liger was on the first Nitro show. Not that I got the first Nitro show right away, because TSN was very weird about it at the time, but I remember being excited for the fact that Liger was coming back.
Yeah, I mean, like, there was that whole period in the, like, 92, he was doing the stuff in WCW. He wouldn't come back for a long time because of the relationship with WCW, and in New Japan wasn't as strong. And then in the Nitro era, it's like, okay, he's full bore coming back along with Muta and like Tenzan and Chono and all these other people coming to do shots on Nitro and pay-per-views and stuff. But let's go back to, I guess this is kind of just before the Nitro era, right? So the match you picked, let's talk about that. What match did you pick, Matt, for our listeners?
I have picked from October 20th, 1996, Jushin Thunder Liger facing off against my all-time favorite wrestler, the Great Muta.
Okay, so is your all-time favorite wrestler the Great Muta or Keiji Muto in general?
Keiji Muto in general, yeah.
But this is one aspect of Keiji Muto's character, the Great Muta, of course. Why did you pick this match?
The reason why I picked this match is... And it's not the best Liger match, and it's not the greatest Liger match by any means, but it's my favorite, partially for sentimental reasons. When I first got a decent dial-up internet connection back in 1997, the very first thing I went searching out was wrestling GIFs and MPEGs. And the one that I found was the Great Muta versus Jushin Thunder Liger. And I was like, oh, wow, that's got to be amazing. I need to see this. And I downloaded this match and was entirely not what I expected, and was awesome, and for so many reasons that I didn't expect it to be. So it's sentimental, plus it's like the greatest side note to Liger's career, I think.
Well, we'll talk about that as we get to it, but this is a very like historical match. For what happens in the course of it. Now, I was trying to do some research about this match, and I don't know about you, but I could not find if they had a match before to set this match up, or this just like it's a match in isolation, and he just happens to, and Liger just happens to do what he does near the end of the match, just out of like, out of the blue.
Well, so we talked about this beforehand, obviously, and I was kind of having the same issue of not finding much of a background story about the match. And you suggested that we talk to the smartest wrestling fan that we both know, which is Alan Forel. And I reached out to Alan, and his response as to what led up to this match was, I don't know, does it matter? So honestly, I think it was a little bit of an out of the blue match, because it's also a period where Liger was starting to dabble a little bit with heavyweights. So I think that's where it was coming from. But there's no huge build-up. There's no big setup to the match that I know of. I'm sure somebody smarter out there might have some deeper explanation of minutia. But as far as I know, there's no deep-seated storyline between the two leading into the match, other than, Liger is kind of everything that is good and right in wrestling. And particularly in New Japan, Muta is the epitome of evil and, the darkness in wrestling.
And doing all this chicanery, rule breaking. He's the guy who like brings out a big spike to stab people in the head, bust them open, and then we get things like the Muta scale and the Hase scale in terms of bleeding and stuff. If you don't know what I'm referring to in terms of the Muta scale, it's this like bleeding scale in wrestling that we measure the amount of blood one sees emanating from someone's forehead. As a verse against like a famous match I think Muto has with I think it was Hase, where they both bled like buckets. Anyways, if you're really gushing out the blood from your head, then you're on the Muta scale. If it's just a little trickle, it doesn't really count. You don't really rate as far as the Muta scale goes. But look it up; it's out there online. People write about it and stuff like that. What I like about the fact that you picked this match was like, I knew someone was going to pick it, but I'm glad it was you, because like, I want to hear like your perspective on this match, because I can feel like some of the other guests I might talk to, they're either going to like just, effusively praise it and it's like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing ever. And like, I watched this match. This is like my second time watching it in, I don't know, like in 15 years. Like I remember watching it a long time ago and I just rewatched it for this episode. And I was just thinking, this was okay. Like this is a decently worked match, but it's the storyline of this match. It's the build up to the big spot that Liger does, which is not a move. It's what he becomes. It's the transformation he undertakes in this match that's like very historical and the highlight of this match. But as a match in of itself, it's okay. Like I don't think it's a bad match. I don't think it's a great match. It's a very their match. Would you say the same thing, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. And I remember back, teenage Matt finally, waiting 4 days for the download to finish up and finally turning it on and watching the match and going through the first part. And I had no clue what was going to end up happening. And you're watching it and you're like, wow, this is not as cool as I kind of thought it would be with these two guys. It's good, but it's not great. It's just okay. And then you hit the last third of the match, and it doesn't matter what happened before then because it all makes sense in the context of what happens at the end. Yes. And I really liked it. It's kind of like the ultimate story match for me, and it entirely self-contained in that one match.
Well, let's get into the match itself. And just as a note, I have to make a point of this. This match is not on New Japan World for some inexplicable reason. I had to go watch this on YouTube, and I had to watch a really shitty copy of this because I do not have the tape, obviously, of that match in my possession here in Japan. It's back in Canada, and I have it on VHS. I know that for a fact. I don't have it on DVD, so I had to scour, to be able to find it on my own. I didn't want to resort to like finding it, asking a friend of mine to send me a copy of his that he or she might have on their own computer, but it's on YouTube, but a very, very low quality of this. How did you watch this, Matt?
The exact same way. I watched the low quality, no commentary version on YouTube.
There you go. So I'll probably put the link in the show description when this show is released so people can go find it, but it is a very easily, accessible match on YouTube. Just type in Great Muta versus Jushin Thunder Liger, or you type in the phrase Kishin Liger. You'll find out why in a couple of minutes, and then you'll be able to find this match. But let's go into the match itself. So Liger is out first, and notably, he's wearing a white costume, Matt. It's a white costume with red trim, which is kind of the opposite of what he normally wears as far as his color scheme goes.
Yeah, it stands out right off the bat, but it also, I said earlier, Liger is kind of the epitome of everything that's good and right in wrestling, and Muta is dark and evil, and it's just kind of epitomized just a little bit more by Liger coming out in his white gear, and it also, again, in hindsight, it's you're reading a little bit more into it, but it also lets you know this is a little bit different. This isn't quite normal right off the bat. Something is a little bit different in this match as soon as he comes out.
Yeah, and out second is, of course, the Great Muta, and he's got some really cool, spooky J-rock music for his entrance. Right off the bat, though, you can tell that the crowd is hot for this match because it's two of these like legendary figures in New Japan, and it's two of the biggest gimmick wrestlers in the company, like character wrestlers in the company.
Yeah, definitely, and Muto is always over no matter what. But Muta always seemed to ramp the crowd up that just little extra bit because it was something special and something different. And I think for a lot of people who are younger than you and I, who are both old fogies by most wrestling fan standards at this point, Liger and Muta were both already living legends at this point. Like, Muta is the last guy to win the G1 as the IWGP champ. He's already had that legendary run in the NWA. Liger's been a multi-time junior champion. He's already the greatest junior who ever lived at this point. So it's a big match just by the two of them being there. And not just in hindsight. Like, it was a big match at the time, even if there wasn't a lot of build up to it.
Yeah, so in contrast to Liger, Muta is wearing black and yellow face paint. It's a very spooky combination for him. And he, like you're saying, Matt, he is so over. Great Muta is so over. Like, he just does, he does the 2-finger signal for that he's going to signal for the green mist. And that just elicits a big pop from the crowd. But when he actually does the spit, right, he spits the mist out before the match starts, the reaction is even louder. Just that simple spot of just spitting stuff out of his mouth is just so over with the crowd.
Yeah, and I don't know, as a kid, like, face painted wrestler blowing mist in somebody's face was always like the ultimate evil bad thing you could do, and it was always the coolest thing that Muta did until, of course, he started to wrestle and you saw everything else that he did, which blew your mind back in the late '80s. But the mist always holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, so right off the bat, though, there's a big Liger call from the fans. The match starts with Great Muta crawling out of the ring right away, and he rushes the barricades, scaring the ever-living shit out of some of the fans in the front row, which is great. I don't mind if wrestlers do things like that because it's part of their gimmick. I'm not a big fan of like when you actually like not assaulting the fans, but like spitting on them. I hate spit in wrestling, to be honest with you. Like, I don't care if it's water or real spit. It's just, you know what? They didn't pay to get spit on. Like, if you want to scare them because your character is a scary person, that's fine. Don't assault fans, whether it's, with a punch or with spit of water or actual saliva. It's gross.
Completely agree. And, Muta gets a bigger and crazier reaction out of the crowd by just running at the barricade than, somebody running through the crowd spraying water on them, or somebody throwing hats to the back of the crowd too.
This match starts off once Muta gets back in the ring. It's a really grapple heavy. So Liger initially goes for Muta's arm, twisting it around until Muta is able to grab the rope. Liger then takes Muta. It's going to be tough for me to not say Muto all the time. It's just try to say Muta. But Liger then takes Muta down by grabbing the leg and catching Muta in a leg lock and then a side headlock. So a really surprisingly not a high flying match. Both guys are actually known for being kind of taken to the air or not a lot of plundering at the start of this match, Matt.
Yeah, and you're going to have to lead the talk about what happened in the match, because seriously, the whole first 2/3 of this match all kind of flows together into a jumble of not particularly memorable. Like, I remember the context of the match and who did what, but I don't remember it move for move, and it's because it's slower, it's more methodical, and they're just taking that first step and building up into the story right from the start, which is, Liger is getting a little bit of the better of Muta, but Muta is obviously trying to, he slides out at the first. He's trying to pause and everything, and he's starting to frustrate Liger a little bit, and then Liger is frustrating Muta with, getting the better of the grappling exchanges.
Yeah, as the match continues, Muta shoots Liger to the ropes, but gets knocked down by a shoulder tackle from Liger. Another exchange sees Liger sending Muta to the outside with a drop kick. It's a pretty standard wrestling match so far. Muta comes back inside. He kicks Liger. He rakes the eyes and gives him the flashing elbow, which is one of my favorite moves from either Muto or Muta.
Yeah, and that's the first time where Muta really takes advantage of or takes control of the matches, but he has to cheat to do it. He gets frustrated with Liger, and he breaks the rules for the first time. And Muta's just cool standing there. Muta is cool just turning his head, and the flashing elbow is awesome.
Yes. From here, Liger reverses an Irish whip into the corner and hits Muta with a capo kick. From here, Muta just immediately bails out to the floor. And the first thing that popped into my mind, is this a Jay White match? So much stuff from Great Muta that I think Jay White maybe incorporates into his own match psychology, so to speak, with the going out to the floor multiple times, because that's something Muta was really well known for.
When this podcast comes out, the takeaway from this is going to be that WH likes Jay White as much as he likes Muta.
No, that's not going to be takeaway. I'm saying he gets a lot of. I'm not saying he's directly influenced by the Great Muta, but I was reminded of Jay White when I see Muta keep bailing out to the floor to avoid having to engage with his opponent, in this case Jushin Thunder Liger.
Well, I think part of the reason why that kind of seems similar to you is both of them have the right timing to do that sort of thing. I know you're not a huge Jay White fan, but he's got a good feel for when to do things. Booking aside and all the interference I know we don't like, but he's got some of the same idea of Muta in the fact that just they instinctively seem to know when is the right time to do something to make it work.
No, I do agree with, like, I think there's something to Jay White. It's just like the Switchblade. It's a character more than the wrestler that I'm not a fan of. But getting back to this match, while Muta is out on the floor, he lunges at the fans in the front row. I think probably making them shit their pants at this point.
Well, Muta's he stays so much in character that he frightens people, and he's not necessarily a fast-moving person, but he moves quickly. So when he takes that charge, and all of a sudden he's not paying attention to the crowd, and then he's on them. And yeah, he'd scare the shit out of me. So.
While he's outside, he also keeps lifting the apron skirt, teasing getting a weapon from under the ring, which is, something that people are used to seeing Great Muta do. Liger takes control of the match and gives Muta a backdrop, which Muta no-sells as he just pops right back up and gives Liger an overhead chop. Muta takes Liger to the outside and gives him a pile driver on a ringside table. Looked really vicious there.
Yeah, and it's the classic Japanese table that's not the flimsy presswood that we have in North America, and it takes a big crunch, and it ups the violence level of this match like immediately. Liger got a little bit frustrated with Muta, followed him to the outside, and that's what Muta wanted, and he starts upping the violence and upping the cheating.
Muta then takes Liger. He chokes Liger with a ringside cable. He then props up a broken table, or at least tries to great comedic effect on my part.
Yeah, and that's one of those things I mean about having the right timing and whatnot. Just a quick glance of his head at a table that won't stay where he wants it, and he's got the crowd going from being terrified of him to laughing, and then immediately being back to terrified of him.
Yeah, because right after that, Muto probably says "fuck this shit" and throws a table right at Liger's head. So he regains his heat from the not being able to prop up the table in the corner. He then grabs some kind of pole and rams it into Liger until Tiger Tori has to take it away from him. Liger fires back with punches and hits his own pie driver too. No effect, Matt. Muta is not affected by any kind of pile driver or backdrop, it seems.
No, and some people complain about Muta's no-selling at times, but again, he like I said before, he knows when to do things at the right time, because it seems like, okay, Liger's making his big comeback, and Muta just blows right through it and, takes back over, and he looks like a badass, and everybody's left wondering, how is Liger ever possibly going to be able to come back against this monster?
From here, Muta launches Liger out to the entrance ramp, and then he gives him a suplex and then a running clothesline. Back in the ring, there's a big backdrop on Liger, but there's only a 2 count. Muta can't beat him at this point in the match. Muta sends Liger to the corner and goes for the space rolling elbow, but Liger dodges it and hits another capo kick, catching Muta right in the fucking face with his foot.
I love the capo kick. It's awesome to watch, and this is a really good one, and it definitely gets Muta's attention, and at this point, Muta understands that he needs to up it another level.
Yeah, at this point, this is like really where we see an escalation in the pace of the match and kind of the intensity, where they're not like grappling anymore. They're done with that. Now they're gonna have a fight with each other. From here, let's see, where am I? Sorry, Muta goes out to the ring again, and Liger hits him with a top rope plancha. So he's jumping from the top turnbuckle onto the floor, onto Muta. Very impressed. Always impressed when he would do stuff like this.
Yeah, it's something about the compact size of Liger. When he flies, you got to figure when he hits you, it hurts.
From here, Muta then goes under the ring, Matt. He disappears from sight. And so we're wondering, where is he? What's he doing under there? Because who knows what's under there, right? There's a lot of shit underneath the ring, like buckets, mops, bleach, but maybe some weapons that could have been placed there by the nefarious Great Muta. Liger is like, fuck this shit, and he follows him under the ring, and there's a great shot of Liger chasing after Muta underneath the ring. Yeah,
and I don't know if this went as smoothly as they had imagined this going or not. It comes off a little bit weird, but it's really fun to see the cameraman go under the ring to watch Liger trying to find Muta under the ring and chase him and get caught up in a whole bunch of guide wires and whatnot that are under there.
So when Muta finally reappears, he's armed with a deadly weapon, a broom. And I got just taken back to like Kenny Omega's cleaner character at this point.
I can't say that comparison popped into my head, but I did think for the Master of Evil Muta's ultimate weapon after 2 minutes under the ring to be a broom was kind of funny.
Yes, like I said, it's funny. It's a broom. Oh, Kenny Omega. That must be the correlation in my memory. Like, I just think comedy, a broom, Kenny Omega, among other things. I don't want to shit on Kenny Omega. It's not the purpose of saying that. Anyways, he hits Liger with the broom, and then he chokes him with it. So actually using this to a much more effectively than Kenny Omega ever used his broom. He then proceeds to tear Liger's mask off, and this is where the match really takes off and enters another level. This is where it reaches legendary status, really, Matt.
Well, this everything that happens from this point on is why this match is the match that I picked, and why people still talk about this match. And Muta's just fed up. He can't figure out how to, he can't quite get the best of Liger, even if he's controlling the match. Liger keeps coming back and coming back. So he decides he's going to destroy Liger, and Liger is the mask as much as he is the man. So Muta decides to tear it off.
And what happens from there?
So Muta goes to the outside after noticeably tearing off the mask. Liger's laying in the ring. His hand he's got his face in his hands. He hasn't moved. The crowd has gasped a little bit. They see that the mask has been ripped, and it's kind of like the hooded mask. So it's torn back, still hanging around his neck, but his head is noticeably exposed. And Muta takes his fine time outside and grabs a chair and hops back in the ring, and he meets Kishin Liger.
Yes, Kishin Liger. Explain Kishin Liger for the fans, for the listeners out there who may or may have never seen this version of Jushin Thunder Liger.
So once Muta gets back in the ring, Liger stands up, takes his hands away from his face. He's painted in white makeup with red writing, and immediately blows green mist in Liger's face, which the crowd just freaks out. And the best part about this, and the reason why this is kind of like an example of how good Liger truly is that from this moment on, this man does not physically resemble Liger in any way, shape, or form. He moves different. He gives out like the loudest sting woo I think I'd ever heard. And he's just pure violent.
Yeah, it's amazing, like, how he becomes a completely different character, like you're saying, Matt. Like, so from here, Liger grabs a spike. This is kind of like one of Muta's signature weapons is the spike, and he blasts Great Muta in the head with it and starts cutting the top half of his costume to reveal the body paint he's wearing underneath that as well. So it's not just like the face paint, this demonic face paint that he's wearing. It's also like this kind of like black scripture he's written on his body as well. I don't know if it's supposed to be like symbols of like, his demonic muscles or some shit like that. Like if you saw this live, I'm sure, and it's the first time you're seeing it, I would imagine that it's something that you would be very taken aback from this, like, this kid-friendly costume wrestler that does a lot of awesome high-flying moves, and now he's this super violent demon character.
Yeah, and you can hear in the crowd when he first stands up, there's like a little bit of confusion and and then when he blows the mist, I think they put this together really nicely, because the second he blows the mist, everybody gets what's going on, and the crowd just gets super behind what they're seeing, which is almost weird. Like you said, it's a kid-friendly costumed character turning into this violent, evil version of himself, and the crowd loves it, which says a lot about wrestling fans, I think. But
yeah, and like we're saying, this is a really violent version of Liger. After the spike shot, there's a chair shot to the head of Muta. He's thrown into the barricade. Liger basically mugs Muta on the outside. It looks like almost like they should be calling the cops on this guy. There's a pile driver on the exposed floor, so he moves the mats away and then gives Muta the pile driver. Liger takes a chair to the top and hits Muta square in the fucking head with this thing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the first time I'm watching this, again, like I said, I had no idea what was coming. I'm blown away by the fact that Liger's turned into this insane little crazy person, and he is beating the holy living shit out of Muta, who to me, Muta had been in the NWA in the late 80s, he was like the coolest, craziest moving wrestler ever. But I knew enough that in Japan, when Muta came out, Muta was evil and violent. And he's getting just destroyed by Liger, and it's fantastic.
From this point, Liger throws a table into the ring and gets it up in the corner. He whips Muta into the table and tries to stab him in the fucking face. Thankfully, Muta moves out of the way, and in a life-saving move, he hits Liger with the red mist. Not the green mist, the red mist. There's a big difference, Matt. Do you know the difference between the green mist and the red mist?
The green mist is the everyday mist. He will hit anybody with the green mist, and that's just normal. But he only busts out the red mist when he means business and shit has gone wrong for him, and he really needs to up his game. And he needs the red mist in order to deal with Kishin Liger.
Yeah, so that's exactly correct. The specific effects of the green mist blinds an opponent, but the red mist burns the opponent. So it's like the green mist is just like regular, like, you know, liquid that gets your eyes. It's like it irritates you, blinds you. But the red mist is fucking tear gas in liquid form.
Well, and then he needed tear gas to deal with Kishin Liger, who was ready to kill him. Literally.
Muta then takes the weapon and hits Liger with it. There's a space rolling elbow, which connects this time. There's a one-armed bulldog, the moonsault, and Muta wins 1, 2, 3. And, you know, like some people might say, why, you know, like you had this great dramatic effect with Liger becoming Kishin Liger. Would it make sense for him to win? But I think the story is that, you know, like even with this character, you know, Muta's established like as a character, as a legend. This character is kind of like still like stronger than Kishin Liger. So I have no problem with like Muta actually winning this match, though. If Kishin Liger won the match, I wouldn't have had a problem either. But I do think you have to protect Muta, the character, more than you have to protect like the case.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it mattered at all whether or not Liger was able to win the match. And it's not the part that I remember, the fact that he didn't win. Just the existence of Kishin Liger in and of itself was amazing. And then, like you said, Muta is, you know, well established as, you know, the top tier in New Japan at that point, and he probably does need a little bit of protection. You know, they still have the in 1996, the heavyweight junior divide would be pretty strong. So Liger doing what he was able to do with Muta, even absent the Kishin Liger aspect of it, was you know, kind of a win in and of itself.
Yeah, so the Great Muta defeats Jushin Thunder Liger, aka Kishin Liger, in 17 minutes and 35 seconds. And overall, what are your, you know, final thoughts about this match, Matt?
You know, it's Kishin Liger is kind of like just a little side note and a footnote. People, a lot of people really love it, but it's a footnote to the career of Jushin Liger. It's only come up 2 other times. It's, you know, it's when people attack Liger's pride or take part of his mask or part of, you know, Liger's being. It draws out Kishin Liger, and it seems to be that we're going to be seeing him at least one more time before January.
Well, you know, as of this recording, I guess you haven't watched Destruction from Kobe, but he did re-debut Kishin Liger in a tag match against Minoru Suzuki. So we're probably, as of this recording, like King of Pro Wrestling hasn't happened yet. So I'm assuming that match happens there. I don't know if they can take it all the way to his retirement match in the Tokyo Dome. Like, and I don't think he should be Kishin Liger in his retirement match. I think he should be Jushin Thunder Liger throughout the whole match for when he retires.
Oh, absolutely. So now I'm super excited to watch Destruction in Kobe today, because I had no idea about that.
Oh, sorry, I spoiled it for you. Sorry about that.
You bastard. It's okay. It happens. You knew it was coming at some point. I'd be okay with, would have been okay with a Kishin Liger match on January 4th, and then a proper send-off for Jushin Liger on the 5th. But if we get Kishin Liger again after this, that's fine. If today was the end of it, that's also cool. You know, just cool to see Liger bust out big parts of his history through his last few months.
So you mentioned like this would be then the 4th time. The thing with the Suzuki up to this point, as of this recording, would be the 4th time he's done Kishin Liger. What are the other 2 times? So
this was in '96 that you know, Kishin Liger debuted. It didn't rear his evil head again for almost a decade, until 2006, when Bad Boy Hito cut off some of Liger's hair. And this is the only time that Liger has announced that he will be transforming into Kishin Liger for a match. And Kishin Liger showed up and put a pretty good beating on Hito in that match. And then the other time was in 2012, which your absolute favorite wrestler, Taichi, drew the ire of Liger by constantly, again, going after his mask and tearing at it and ripping at it and ripping at it. And Taichi had to deal with Kishin Liger showing up in a tag match and, again, trying to kill him with a spike.
Yeah, it's always a fun time when, Kishin Liger shows up to, brutally assault wrestlers, especially when the wrestlers I don't particularly care for. So that Taichi match was a lot of fun to watch. I think I've seen the Bad Boy Hito match. Bad Boy Hito was a guy from FMW, as I recall. I was not that familiar with it, with that angle or with him, but I think probably that's easy to find out. I might go out, seek it out, when I have some time, when I'm not watching all these other Liger matches to prepare for the rest of the episodes in this series. But Matt, thank you so much for coming on to Thunderstruck, and I really appreciate it, as always. It's always fun to talk with you. And where can people find Matt McEwen?
You can find me on Twitter at Matt McEwen4, and other than that, don't find me at all.
Yeah, I mean, you're really stepping up the chicanery yourself on Twitter recently, and especially when it comes to legal issues. That's kind of your thing.
Well, it's just one of those things where, sometimes people step out of their realm of knowledge and overstate things here and there. And when it pops into legal stuff, I will do my best to help people out to know what's really going on.
Yeah, you had this really great line. Someone, you were talking about the labor issue in California, and what's your qualification? You said, what was your response? Your job description?
My JD degree and my common sense.
Yeah, so there you go. It's kind of, especially who you're responding to. We won't say who you're responding to, but I thought it was funny.
I don't even remember who I was responding to at that point. But,
yeah, we won't. If people want to look for that Twitter thread, you can go. I doubt you'll find it. You can't find anything on Twitter unless you're really, really looking to shit can someone. But anyways, it was a fun exchange. I always enjoy when people bring up legal stuff and you jump in there as you have this radar for legal issues in wrestling Twitter. And I know, okay, I see something about the law, labor law, contract law, some kind of law issue. Okay, Matt's going to be in there soon, and he's gonna tear somebody apart, which I'm always a big fan of you tearing people apart on wrestling Twitter with legal stuff, Matt.
I really shouldn't do that. I should be friendlier on Twitter, but the snark gets the best of me sometimes.
Well, we're Canadian. We're the snarky Canadian type, so it's very evident both your Twitter and my Twitter, it seems. But that's okay. It's all good. So my name's WH Park again, sorry. And you can find me at WH Park 9 if you want to give me a follow on Twitter as well. And on behalf of Matt, thanks to all the listeners for listening to our review of Jushin Thunder Liger versus the Great Muta from October 20th, 1996 in Japan Pro Wrestling. And until the next episode, I will say to everyone, goodbye.